Okay, so I have three articles for you today. And the first one is about Tylenol, or better yet, acetaminophen. You know, the thing that Trump can't pronounce. Anyway, Texas's anti-LGBTQ plus attorney general sues Tylenol company over autism claims. Now, I'm sure this attorney general would never have sued any tobacco company or a vape company if it turned out that they were hiding anything. But he's going after Tylenol because RFK Jr. made shit up. Now, my question is, why Tylenol? Why is he going after acetaminophen? Did he just see that a lot of women, especially during pregnancy, take acetaminophen because, that's one of the only things that pregnant women can take that won't harm the fetus? Oh, and so he just did a lazy and decided, oh, that must be it. The fact that autism was discovered long before Tylenol was invented is completely immaterial because why let facts get in the way? But I'd love to know, is it just that? Is it because he knew that Trump wouldn't be able to pronounce acetaminophen, so let's get it off the market? I don't know. I would really love to know why he chose acetaminophen. But anyway, to the article. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing Johnson & Johnson, accusing the pharmaceutical company of failing to warn consumers about the risk of taking Tylenol while pregnant. Because they should warn parents, they should warn pregnant women about something that RFK Jr. pulled out of his ass. This lawsuit, the first of its kind from a state government, comes a month after President Donald Trump and U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced updated guidance discouraging pregnant women from taking acetaminophen, citing it as a possible cause of autism. The announcement set off a wave of controversy in the healthcare community and confusion among pregnant women unsure how they should manage fever and pain during pregnancy. Okay, now before I continue, I just want to point out that even though Tylenol, the main active ingredient, is acetaminophen, that is not the only medication that contains acetaminophen. So, why are we only going after Tylenol? Because that's the only drug Trump and possibly RFK Jr. are familiar with that contains acetaminophen. So, that's why we're going after Tylenol. And none of the other drugs that actually contain acetaminophen. All right. Now, all I can say is pregnant women should not be confused. They should not be listening to worm brain. And they sure as hell should not be listening to a guy who can't even pronounce acetaminophen. So, yeah. Yeah, I would listen to actual experts. So, yeah. Anyway, the science around Tylenol and autism is uncertain. Is it though? Well, some studies suggest a correlation between taking Tylenol while pregnant and having a child with autism. And I would like to point out correlation is not causation. You could correlate all sorts of things that have nothing to do with each other. That doesn't mean one caused the other. Others have repudiated those findings. Major medical associations rejected Kennedy and Trump's claims as overly generalized and potentially harmful. And that's the thing. This is why the do your own research crowd is full of bullshit. Because it's like reading, say, a restaurant review or a review of an appliance. Some people like it and some people have a certain issue with the restaurant or the appliance, and somebody else will have the complete opposite experience and cite the same facts, but that either it worked better for them or they liked something about the very thing that this other person did not like. So then you're left wondering, okay, should I get this? Should I not? Because the negative reviews are saying this, but there are positive reviews that contradict. Which is why you go there and you go to the restaurant yourself and make your own damn decision. That, yes, because every taste is different. That's a fact. However, as with appliances, like I said, some people didn't have the problems, other people did. And so you're like, okay, should I get this? Should I not? And it's just a decision you have to make. When you have an expert, when you have access to an expert who can tell you, okay, yes, you should get this, maybe some people got defective products, but for the most part, this is a good product. That, you have to. At that point, you have to, because everyone's experience is different. Sometimes you might get a defective product. That should not indicate that that's a bad product. It just means that particular item was bad, but as a whole, they're fine. So, same thing here. You need to listen to the experts because, first off, they know how to read the literature. Sometimes people will misunderstand what the literature is saying, and you need experts who are familiar with the lingo to properly explain it. So, or, sometimes you will see seemingly contradictory studies. So you just have to go with what the doctors think is the best. Whether it be because, oh yes, this had a different result, but they took into account these factors and not these factors. So it's a very narrow way of looking at the study. People don't look, they just want to look at the summary. Okay, what does this have to say about my condition, about this drug? And it's much more complicated because it could be talking about certain conditions, certain age groups. It could be talking about certain genders, certain races. It could be talking about all sorts of specific things that you're not looking at if you're just looking at the summary. So, yeah, that's why you talk to experts. That's why this do your own research crowd, unless you happen to know how to read the studies and can understand that studies are limited and this is what the limitations were. If you are able to read studies, then fine. But if you are just looking for a quick summary, no, you should just go with what the experts are saying. You talk to your doctor. They will tell you what is going on, how to best read the standards of care. That's it. Anyway, Kenvue, the corporate subsidiary that makes Tylenol, said in a statement that it would vigorously defend itself against Paxton's claims in court. And considering it's only worm brain and cankles that are claiming that acetaminophen is linked to autism, because again, facts suck. Autism was discovered before Tylenol. So, yeah. If autism existed before Tylenol, Tylenol obviously did nothing to create this crisis. So, yeah. We stand firmly with the global medical community that acknowledges the safety of acetaminophen and believe we will continue to be successful in litigation as these claims lack legal merit and scientific support, the company said in a statement. This issue has been bubbling up for far longer than Trump and Kennedy have been in office. Dozens of people have filed personal injury lawsuits against Johnson & Johnson and its corporate spin-off Kenvue, alleging adverse neurodevelopmental outcomes for their children after taking Tylenol while pregnant. Okay, that's new. I did not know that. Those cases have been consolidated into multi-district litigation, which is still making its way through the courts and being led by Ashley Keller of Chicago law firm Keller Postman. Keller has represented Texas in litigation against Google and Meta and has been contracted by the Attorney General's office to handle this new lawsuit against Johnson & Johnson. Okay. First off, like I said, I did not know that, but that might explain why RFK Jr. decided to jump on Tylenol causes autism link, because there were already people who decided that I took Tylenol, my kid ended up with autism, it must be Tylenol's fault, rather than shit happens. So, since RFK Jr. has not met a conspiracy theory he does not like, he probably saw this kookiness and decided to jump on it. So now that answers my question from the beginning of this video as to why Tylenol. Why did he jump on Tylenol specifically? Because, like I mentioned, acetaminophen is in plenty of products. It's not just Tylenol, just that Tylenol is acetaminophen. But acetaminophen is in other drugs, not just Tylenol. Paxton figured I knew the science, I knew the history, I knew a lot of the moving parts, Keller said in an interview, and so I'd be an obvious choice to pursue this for Texans. Paxton, who is running in the GOP primary to unseat U.S. Senator John Cornyn, said in a statement announcing the lawsuit that by holding Big Pharma accountable for poisoning our people, we will help make America healthy again. Okay. So, but I just love it about this lawyer. I knew the science. You are a lawyer, not a scientist, so you do not know the fucking science. Because if you did, you would know that acetaminophen is safe for pregnant women. No, you are either a shyster lawyer, an ambulance chaser, or you just, honestly believe that you know better than the scientific community, which is never a good look when you claim to know more than an expert. If it turns out you know more than the expert, then there's something really, really wrong with the expert. Now, it just amazes me how people will do this only with science. They think that they can out research the experts, that they know more than the experts. Now, the only way that patients know more than the experts is you know how your body feels. You know how your body feels when you take X medication. You know how your body felt before you were on any medication. So only you can explain to the doctor what is happening to your body and what you're experiencing. That is the only thing that you know more than the doctor. But nobody claims that, oh, you shouldn't call a plumber when something happens to your plumbing, because that you should do your own research and do it yourself. How do you do your own research? Well, you might watch YouTube videos of experts telling you how to do it. It's just wild how, yeah, you can do certain things yourself. You can do certain home improvement yourself. But still, for the most part, once you reach the point where you are no longer able to do it, you call experts. You don't just call any random person and say, could you help me with this? You don't do that with dentistry, which is a science, but somehow that's fallen under the radar, except for fluoride. But just about every expertise, people will look to actual experts, except when it comes to science. Oh yeah, and lately politicians. Let's not get a lawyer to tell us what the law says. Let's elect a reality TV show host who doesn't know his ass from the hole in the ground. Because you need to surround yourself with advisors that somehow he'll magically muddle through. No, that's not how this works. If you want to know the law, you consult a lawyer. Regardless of the bad rap lawyers get, they still know the law better than you. The only thing I can say about this regime is that they are seriously giving a lot of people a civics lesson. Something that they should have gotten in school. I don't know if they were sick that day or just avoided it or just ignored it. But civics education is lacking. And it's just, it's great that you're learning things like the different amendments to the Constitution, what powers the president has, what powers the Congress has, what powers the court has. That's great that they're finally learning this stuff, but you shouldn't be learning it because the president is criming. Anyway, what the science says. Autism affects approximately 1 in 31 American children, and the rate of diagnosis has increased almost 300% over the last 20 years. Researchers attribute that rise to better screening and an expanded definition of the spectrum of behaviors that qualify for a diagnosis. And that is true. There are plenty of high functioning autistic people that, there'll be stories on the news about such and such a person or such and such a child having autism. And my dad would look at them and he'd be like, no, that's not autism. That kid's not autistic. Because he's thinking of the nonverbal, the really bad, the classic examples of autism. Whereas not all autistics fall into that category anymore. There's a spectrum. My dad used to joke that based on the spectrum, everybody's autistic because everyone has some of those symptoms. So yeah, he didn't buy into the autism spectrum. I do. I'm going to trust the experts to tell me that, what the difference between just about anybody else and the highest functioning autistic person. I'm going to go on a limb and say they know better, so I'm not going to question them. So yeah. Of course, even RFK Jr. they only thinks of autism the in the classic definition. He doesn't think of it as a spectrum either because he talks about how they'll never fall in love, they'll never write a poem, they'll never understand a poem. It's like, it's a spectrum. There are high functioning autistics. It's no longer just those who are like Rain Man. And I think Rain Man was doing just fine too, but whatever. Anyway, back to the article. Kennedy, in contrast, has long blamed the debunked theory that autism is caused by common childhood vaccines. I'm actually shocked that that's why I was shocked that he's linking Tylenol to autism because he hates vaccines so much. I thought he was going to say, yep, it's the vaccines. But no. Since becoming health secretary, Kennedy has vowed to figure out and eliminate the root causes of autism, putting $50 million toward research. Relabeling Tylenol was one of his first steps. Kennedy pointed to an August study from the Harvard School of Public Health and Mount Sinai Hospital that found pregnant women who reported taking acetaminophen seemed to be slightly more likely to have a child diagnosed with autism, a conclusion other studies have reached over the years. The question is, what was the control group in these studies? Because like I said, it's one thing to claim, okay, these women took acetaminophen and they ended up having autistic kids. Okay. What about the pregnant women who took acetaminophen but did not have autistic kids? Or what about the kids that were autistic before acetaminophen even was a thing? So there's more to this than just, oh, this person took acetaminophen and she ended up having an autistic kid. So obviously, like I said, you have to read the details of the study. It's not just to glance over and say, oh, this must be the thing, and not look at, did they have a control group? What did the control group say? Because sometimes, if you just read the summaries, you would think that you would come to the conclusion that a scientist wants you to come to. But at the same time, a good summary will point out that we think that there's a correlation here, but the control group was like this, so we can't say it's a causation. Because again, Correlation does not equal causation. All right. But one of the largest studies, which looked at the health records of 2.5 million children born in Sweden over 25 years, found that link went away when they looked at siblings, where the parent took acetaminophen during one pregnancy but not the other. In other words, it's freaking genetic, which we already freaking knew. It's hard to get 100% definitive case closed on any topic in epidemiology. Dr. Brian Lee, a Drexel University epidemiologist who authored that study, told the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health podcast. It would be unethical to give pregnant women Tylenol just to see if they have a child with autism. So researchers must rely on less definitive methods to determine how great the risk is. And that, yes, that is unethical to say. Let's see if we can give your kid autism. Take this Tylenol and let's see what happens. Obviously, you don't want to give a child a condition. So, obviously, you cannot do that. So, you can only go by what's already in the world. And because, depending on how far back we're talking, memories can go bad. So they might not properly remember certain factors that could help sway things one way or the other. While more research is needed, he said, right now the needle is pointing strongly toward there being no causal effect of acetaminophen use during pregnancy on autism. Keller, the lawyer leading the litigation against Johnson & Johnson, said it's better to inform people about the potential risks and the uncertainty around them and let them make their own decisions based on that. This worries me because this really sounds like, now, obviously, it's ultimately up to the patient to decide what they're going to do. So that is true. However, Tylenol is, like I said, pretty much the only thing pregnant women can take for pain and fever. So you take that away, and okay, maybe the kid won't end up autistic if there truly is a link, which I call bullshit on. But putting your unborn child through a fever because the mom has a fever, because let's face it, what the mom goes through, the fetus goes through. So to keep the mom in pain or to not treat the fever, not good for the pregnancy. So, yeah, okay, maybe the kid might end up autistic. Would you rather have an autistic kid or a miscarriage? I mean, that's why you have experts to go over all of this with you. We don't need a lawyer saying, oh, well, the patient should be given all the facts and make their own decision. Do you not go to the doctor? Do you not have discussions with your doctor? Seriously, why is it that so many people are this holier than thou, as if they've never walked into a doctor's office before in their entire lives? It is just wild. It is mind-boggling to me that these major medical organizations would say, we aren't sure and therefore we should say nothing. What? That is exactly not what they said. The opposite is true. We are not sure and therefore we should sound the alarm. And again, that is literally not what any major medical association is saying. They are actually saying that there is no link. And since there is no link, there is no risk. So shut the fuck up. Person who probably flunked freshman biology. Jesus Christ. That's the other thing. A lot of these do your own research crowd, did they pay attention in freshman biology? Do they understand anything about science? Probably the answer is no. A federal judge recently excluded the expert witness that Keller had planned to present in the consolidated litigation against Johnson & Johnson, supposedly because the science wasn't strong enough, he said. That decision has been appealed to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Okay. You're whining that your expert witness doesn't have vigorous science on his side, but you claim that you know the science. This is proof that you do not know the science. You have a conclusion and you found someone who would back your conclusion up, because if your expert witness was scientifically worthy, you wouldn't have to appeal shit. All right. Paxton's lawsuits builds on these claims, saying Johnson & Johnson willfully ignored and attempted to silence the science around acetaminophen and autism. Paxton takes specific aim at a spin-off company, Kenvue, which the suit says was only created to shelter Johnson & Johnson's main assets from liability. Oh my God. If these people spent even an iota of the amount of energy they used to create conspiracy theories and pretzeling their brains, they might actually, be smart at something. Given the prevalence of acetaminophen's use in these conditions, there is little doubt that defendants will have to pay tens of billions of dollars in damages to children who were permanently injured from acetaminophen use, the lawsuit said. Again, genius, then explain how autism existed before acetaminophen. As Attorney General, Paxton has a different avenue into court than an individual trying to prove that Tylenol caused their child's autism. While those lawsuits focus on personal injury claims, this suit hinges on two state consumer protection laws, the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act and the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. That overlaps a lot with the science and with the argument that is going on about Tylenol right now. But it's ultimately a different burden of proof and different damages that we're going to be seeking, Keller said. Texas has repeatedly sued Johnson & Johnson over the years, negotiating a $290 settlement over the company's role in the opioid epidemic in 2021. I'm pretty sure that a million or billion was left out of that. Tens of millions of dollars in settlements over medical devices and $158 million for deceptive marketing of the anti-schizophrenic drug Risperdal. All right. So, I'm getting this out of the Advocate, but I'm reading here that this article originally appeared in the Texas Tribune. All right. So the fact that they keep suing Tylenol isn't a good look. I mean, on the one hand, you could say, oh, maybe there's something to, Tylenol's a bad drug. It's not. There's a reason Texas is suing acetaminophen, and I'm pretty sure it's because they wouldn't know signs of it bit them in the ass, and so they're going to go after anything they do not understand, which is a lot, if not everything. All right, so that is the end of that article. All right, so moving on. Now, this is an opinion, which I normally do not do, but it's a very interesting article titled Mike Johnson, a defender of a dictator, wildly blames Zohran Mamdani for the government shutdown. And I saw that and I thought, oh, I've got to read this. I mean, that's just beyond crazy. But Mike Johnson is so desperate to please Trump, so desperate not to reopen government. And for those people who say the Democrats could reopen government, technically correct. The Senate Democrats could technically pass the House bill, the House continuing resolution. However, Mike Johnson refuses to bring the House back into session. So, even if the Senate were to negotiate and come up with a different resolution to the shutdown, they would need the House, which isn't in session. So, no. Anyway, let's find out how this is Zohran Mamdani's fault. If Mike Johnson really thinks the bold, fresh face of the Democratic Party is Zohran Mamdani, then so be it. Actually, kind of is right now. Mamdani is exactly what he and his fellow Republicans fear, and that is hopeful, inclusive, energetic, and unabashedly on the side of the many, not the few. Johnson, with that pathetic, pious look on his face. Yeah, that tracks. Yeah, I agree with that. Railed against House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries for endorsing Mamdani for New York City mayor. Yeah, it only took him till right before the election to do it. Because, just like all Democrats, we can't go after this Democratic socialist. No, we've got to endorse Andrew Cuomo. Even though he has killed people and sexually harassed and assaulted people. But, Zohran Mamdani, oh my God, it's got socialist in the name, so he must be horrible. Anyway. Let's see, where was I? Johnson, the arbiter of anything that isn't remotely inclusive, he said that Mamdani is the face of the Democratic Party. As you will read below, that's not such a bad thing when compared to Johnson as the Republican face. They refer to Mamdani as a communist. If you speak to actual communists, which we do have a communist party in this country, if you speak to actual communists, no, he's not. But, people see the word socialist and have an absolute meltdown because socialism and communism are somehow the same damn thing, which they're not. Anyway. But that wasn't the worst part of what Johnson had to say about Mamdani. He actually blamed Mamdani for the government shutdown. Now, this isn't even the mayor of New York. This is a candidate for mayor. And somehow he's responsible for the thing that Congress did. All right. Throwing a hissy fit, Johnson said, "We can't allow a rise of Marxist and far-left activists in one party to shut down the entire operation of the federal government." And that is exactly what they are allowing them to do. The Democrats have got to come to their senses. You can endorse communists all you want, but at least keep the government operating for us. What? I'm sorry, those are words. They make sentences, but they don't make a lick of sense. Again, not a communist, not a Marxist. And what does that have to do with the government shutdown? Endorsing a candidate will not do that. Anyway. Oh, yes, that's what else I wanted to mention. Let's see, where was it? We can't allow far-left activists of one party shut down the entire operation of the federal government. Okay, what about the far right? I mean, you've been taken over by the far right. You've been taken over by MAGA. Is that okay? If we have Nazis and fascists? All right. Moving on. This is from a man who is allowing Donald Trump to do everything he wants to destroy our democracy. And he's succeeding thanks to John's spineless, pious stupidity. All right. And yep, so far I'm agreeing with everything here. Because Mike Johnson, with some help from Trump, is 100% responsible for the government shutdown, he presides over a House that he's refusing to bring back into session, even as federal workers go unpaid, as the shutdown he precipitated drags on, as every day of delay erodes public trust and harms ordinary people, which I'm pretty sure was the fucking point to begin with. Now, is the reason that the House isn't in session because of the government shutdown? That's possibly a reason. But the main reason is he's scared shitless of the Epstein files. I mean, he's so scared you'd think he was in the damn files. Because what the heck, dude? He's shut down the government. He's keeping the House out of session because he doesn't want to seat a Democrat from Arizona who just won a special election a month ago, who would be the 218th signature to bring a vote on releasing the Epstein files. That is why he is keeping the House out of session and ensuring that even though the Senate is apparently getting closer to a compromise, they would need the House in session. They can't do this themselves. So, yeah. But eroding public trust in the government, yeah, that's what they want. They wanted to get into power and in government so they could destroy government. They could destroy government and then point and say, see, government doesn't work. Because we're claiming that the thing we prevented from working doesn't work. And now, just when the last piece of the discharge petition to force the releasing of the Epstein files to the House floor is ready, when Arizona Representative-elect Adelita S. Grijalva is finally set to take the oath and become the signature that triggers the vote. What does the puny Johnson do? He sits on his hands. He won't swear her in because he knows that that a full House floor means accountability. Mike, you might as well just go ahead and blame Mamdani for the Epstein files delay while you're at it. Don't give him ideas. Because surely Mamdani is not white, is to blame. Johnson, a defender of Nazism, perhaps unintentionally, feels Mamdani is a threat to all that is good. Johnson leads a caucus of mostly white, mostly older straight men whose greatest achievement under his oversight has been giving Donald Trump carte blanche to march this country backward. Johnson loves repression and oppression, and that's done by choking the poor. I mean, this is a guy who proudly proclaims that he's on Covenant Eyes. It's an app and you have a buddy to ensure that you're not looking at porn. And who is his buddy? His son. I'm sorry. How big of a porn addiction do you have to fucking have to need to have someone hold you accountable for looking at porn? Most people do not have that problem. They either look at porn on occasion, but they don't feel the need to have an accountability buddy to ensure that they're not watching it too much. And your son? What? Oh my God, that's just ew. So of course he loves repression and oppression. He represses himself, if you can believe that, he's on Covenant Eyes and he has an accountability partner to ensure he's not looking at porn. So he definitely loves repression. And let's face it, the reason the Democrats won't agree to this continuing resolution is because it guts Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act tax incentives will go bye-bye, so you have to pay full price. So the whole point of the Affordable Care Act exchange, or what's known as Obamacare, the prices will not be any cheaper than anywhere else. So, yeah. Johnson and his GOP priorities are to block the Epstein files now and for the future to promote Nazism. What's not a priority for the party? Let's start with the soon-to-be dried-up funds for the life-saving Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program that affects over 40 million people who rely on it for food. It will run out of money November 1st because of the shutdown, and Johnson could care less. Yes, he just wants to own the libs. An Ozzie and Harriet caucus that happily passed the big, beautiful bill, a disgusting act that will enrich the rich while slamming the poor and lower middle class. They were so giddy about it. All the while, Johnson lectures on Christian values, invokes faith, and ignores the very commandments he says he obeys. Because it's true. I mean, it's amazing to me that they invoke Christianity where they ignore basically everything Jesus says. I mean, I just do not understand this. They insist on reading the Old Testament with its mistranslations and ignore the fact that most people understand what the mistranslations are. And they refuse to actually follow Jesus. They claim to worship Jesus, but the Jesus they worship is not the Jesus in the Bible. So, yeah. Now consider Mamdani. He's young, immigrant born, a citizen of this country by choice. I believe he became a citizen in 2018. Fiery, open-minded, creative. He stands for childcare, education, raising the minimum wage, building affordable housing, LGBTQ plus rights, and forging an inclusive society where people from every background feel they belong. Mamdani is looking out for the poor, not just the white, rich, and Christian club that Johnson and his party care about. Mamdani isn't just offering policies, he's offering hope. Johnson offers a dark, Nazi white ethos that snuffs out hope for anyone not like him. How much would you like to wager that Johnson blames Mamdani for depleted SNAP funds? No one would believe that. There is only one man who stands for lifting up the too often ignored, while the other stands for preserving power, protecting privilege, obstructing justice. If Johnson wants to make Mamdani the face of the Democrats, go ahead. Because the future belongs to Mamdani's generation, his vision, his coalition. Johnson can smear Mamdani all he wants. I'm sure he's jealous of his youth, his background, his ability to inspire change and exude positivity. And when Johnson tries to smear Mamdani, he's not just attacking a candidate, he's also attacking a non-white, non-rich, non-Christian elite face of the future. Meanwhile, Mamdani stands in a party where color, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, or faith does not disqualify you. It strengthens you. He represents equity. He represents inclusion. He stands for a country where the streets aren't militarized, where healthcare isn't a privilege, where inflation doesn't burden jobless, and where people really care about the jobless. Okay, before I continue, let's parse this. Now, Johnson goes on and on about DEI. He on many occasions has said he does not like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mamdani represents all of that. So, of course, he doesn't like Mamdani. And, of course, his ilk have been taught that communism and socialism is the same damn thing. Is communism a form of socialism? 100%. Does that mean all socialists are communists? No, they aren't. Anyway, so yeah. Now, what does Mamdani represent? Mike Johnson refuses to see that the streets are militarized, or, he insists that in this dystopian idea that Chicago is being overrun by crime, all these blue cities are being overrun by crime, and that we need to send the National Guard to these cities. All the while, the cities with the highest crime rates are in red states. So why not deploy your National Guard to help crime there? Because this isn't about crime. Healthcare isn't a privilege. I mean, let's face it. Nobody should go broke just because they get sick. That should be common sense. Nobody should go broke just because they get sick. That's just ridiculous. Where inflation doesn't burden the jobless, and where people really care about the jobless. Exactly. And I think I mentioned this in a previous video, it just really gets me that in capitalism, that there is this healthy Goldilocks zone for the unemployed. Why should we have a certain amount of unemployed? You're basically saying in order for certain people to be prosperous, other people have to suffer. That should not be a thing. Why not do a radical idea and make sure that everybody can, if not be super rich, at least not struggle? Everyone should be allowed to be able to live in a content lifestyle. Will everybody be able to be super rich? No. But they shouldn't have to worry about where their next meal's coming from either. All right. I don't need to say this, but just to be clear, Johnson stands for the opposite. Johnson's party is becoming more and more a party of the fringe and the extreme. That's not the party of Mamdani. Johnson will preach love but practice hate out in the open, as in labeling the No Kings protest Hate America rallies. Yes, he did actually say that these people support Hamas, they support Hezbollah, they support, let's see, what else did he say? Communists, I believe he said. I mean, he just threw out buzzwords. I bet he doesn't know anything about Hamas. He just knows that they're a terrorist group. Same thing with Hezbollah. Just knows they're terrorists. Could not tell you a damn thing about them. So, yeah. But no Kings was a Hate America rally because you're letting Trump get away with everything. He demolished the East Wing of the White House. I mean, I realize Melania doesn't want to live there, but dang. Seriously. Just so he could build a ballroom so he could have his name on it because he is so thirsty for adoration. He wants people to love him. And that's why he always puts his names on his freaking buildings, because he needs people to know that he's somebody. And he conned people for a long time, and he's still conning people. There's still a good amount of people who still think he's actually something because he put his name on some buildings. He thinks of himself as a builder the same way Scott Besson thinks of himself as a soybean farmer. It's just wild what these people think, that they think that they're somehow like everybody else. Anyway, he invokes America's greatness while refusing to bring the House back, blocking accountability, ignoring the workers who aren't getting paid, and slamming the door in the face of Grivalova because she is the last stop to expose the Epstein files. What a poor excuse for a leader. I'll take Mamdani's bright, hopeful, and inclusive attitude any day of the week. Who knows? Maybe Johnson will blame Mamdani for Americans who still have hope in a democracy. All right. So that is the end of that article, that opinion article. And, I mean, I did not follow how this is Mamdani's fault. But, obviously he can't be clear about it simply because he doesn't have a clear reason. He just is literally throwing shit at the wall hoping something sticks, because his whole job is to just be in survival mode. He just simply wants to be able to cling to power. And if Trump gets his way to a certain point, the Republicans will never have to relinquish power, because they will have set things up so even if there are elections that they will keep their jobs or some Republicans will still be in power. How they're going to do that with the presidency, I guess they're just going to pull an authoritarian regime and fix the elections. And if the opposition wins, they're just going to claim that it was rigged. If they win, it was a free and fair election. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to a subject that actually, even though all three articles have been from The Advocate, this one actually concerns the LGBT plus community. Texas Supreme Court rules that judges can refuse to marry same-sex couples. Because why the hell not? All right. The Texas Supreme Court has ruled that state judges may decline to perform weddings, including same-sex marriages, based on religious belief. Critics say the move could erode public confidence in the impartiality of the courts and chip away at the practical reach of marriage equality in Texas. Okay. It just drives me crazy that these Christian nationalists seem to think that the Constitution doesn't apply to them, that laws do not apply to them, because that's what their idea of religious freedom means. That if they do not believe in something, they do not have to do their fucking job. Because they can do every aspect of their job except one. Because they don't believe in it. My guy, get a different job. We all have jobs where there are certain parts of it we do not like. We do the job anyway because that's what a job is. We can't pick and choose unless it's something you really can't do, like I don't drive. One of my initial job requirements was to do the homebound program at the library. Obviously, I can't drive, so I cannot do I went, but I had to have another librarian drive me. And they were willing. That wasn't the problem. But the fact is, accommodations had to be made because I don't drive. But they were willing to make those accommodations. So, absolutely, if there is a valid reason why you can't do something, and your employer knows this ahead of time, they can make accommodations. But the law is the law. I'm pretty sure that there were plenty of people when slavery was legal who absolutely hated having to rule in such a way for the slave owner over the slave. And I'm sure it was heartbreaking for them. But they had to follow the law. Same-sex marriage is the law. You don't like it, get a different job. Anyway, the order issued Friday adds a single but sweeping line to the Canon 4 of the Texas Code of Judicial Conduct. It is not a violation of these canons for a judge to publicly refrain from performing a wedding ceremony based upon a sincerely held religious belief. You know what? How the hell do you know that? How the hell do you know it's a sincerely held religious belief? I never understood that. Are there people who believe that same-sex marriage is an affront to God? Absolutely. But how do you know that how do you know that that's a sincerely held religious belief? Because the Bible literally does not say that anywhere. There is nowhere in the Bible that says that you should be against same sex marriage. There is nowhere in the Bible that says you should be against homosexuality. And if you bring up the stupid fucking Sodom and Gomorrah, that is one of the mistranslations I mentioned earlier. It is not a man shall not lie with another man as they would a woman. It's no man should lie with a boy. It's about pedophilia, not homosexuality. Sodom was destroyed for pedophilia, not for homosexuality. And people do not want to accept that because they want the Bible to hate the same things they hate. So, the amendment signed by all 9 justices of the all-Republican court, there's a shock, took immediate effect. The justices ordered it to be published in the Texas Bar Journal and the Texas Register. The change follows years of quiet tension over the obligations of judges in a state where local officials and clerks have occasionally resisted same-sex marriage rulings. Dallas Fox affiliate KDFW reports that the issue gained traction after a Waco judge was publicly admonished in 2019 for refusing to perform same-sex marriages while continuing to officiate heterosexual ceremonies. That judge argued the state's code of conduct did not protect her religious beliefs. The new language now explicitly does. You know, I really, really wonder if this is only going to apply to Christians. Because what if you have a sincerely held religious belief that you should only marry homosexual couples and heterosexual couples too bad? Or I don't marry bigots. Seriously, how are we going to do this for non-Christians? Because I will bet you anything that the minute a non-Christian proclaims a sincerely held religious belief that is counter or that discriminates against Christians, suddenly this law about sincerely held religious beliefs will be shown for what it is. A cudgel for Christians to get away with whatever bigotry they want. Because that seems to be the way this country is rolling right now. They want Christians to be given special privileges, to discriminate, to hate, and nobody can stop them. Anyway, moving on. For civil rights advocates, the decision represents a troubling precedent. It suggests that judges who swear to uphold the Constitution and apply the law equally may selectively refuse to serve certain citizens based on personal faith, which I mentioned earlier. Some advocates worry that allowing public officials to opt out of duties central to equality undermines the guarantees of Obergefell versus Hodges, the 2015 U.S. Supreme Court decision that made marriage equality the law of the land. Don't worry, I'm sure once the Supreme Court takes on Kim Davis, they'll happily overturn Obergefell versus Hodges. I'm sure that'll happen. Josh Rovinger, legal director at GLAD Law, a Boston-based LGBTQ+ legal advocacy group, told The Advocate that while the Texas court's move is significant, it reflects a broader legal trend rather than a singular break. He noted that in Obergefell and later cases such as Masterpiece Cake Shop and 303 Creative, the U.S. Supreme Court has sought to balance the dignity of both same-sex couples and individuals with strong religious beliefs. Are we sure it's a balance? Those decisions, he said, suggest that the court has tried to create frameworks in which marriage equality and religious liberty can coexist. Oh, you sweet summer child. From Glad Law's perspective, Rovinger noted, the two principles are not inherently incompatible. True, not incompatible, but where the hell did you get that from those two cases? Masterpiece Cake Shop and 303 Creative, they ruled in favor of the plaintiff. And actually 303 Creative was even more bizarre because it was based on a hypothetical. It wasn't even based on an actual case. So, yeah, I'd like whatever it is you're smoking. Republicans in Texas have gone to great lengths to undo LGBTQ plus rights in the state. Governor Greg Abbott signed a law in September barring transgender people from using bathrooms in state facilities that are in line with their gender identity. One can only hope that there are non-gendered facilities for them to use. Also in September, a professor was fired and the president of Texas A&M University resigned amid controversy over curriculum materials on LGBTQ plus topics. All right. So that is the end of that article. Yes, things are not looking good for the LGBT plus community, especially in Texas. But I'm worried about what will happen when the inevitable happens that Obergefell gets overturned by the Supreme Court. Because it's going to happen. Who was it? Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, who wrote in the Dobbs decision that basically Obergefell is next. So, yeah, not a lot of good news today, or any good news. So, I believe that is all I have for this video, and with that, I will see you guys in the next one.